ago when I was calling these guys out. I mean, maybe it would have made a difference, maybe, if you would have said something back then when they were putting these AAA ratings on all this junk paper. But no, because he didn't want to upset the apple cart, or he didn't understand enough about it. So I think I can really tap into the sentiment that's building out there to throw the bums out, to get rid of the incumbents, and I can paint him in that box like no one else can. And I think I can debate him. I think after he debates me, I don't think he'll be able to get elected dog catcher in the state of Connecticut. So I think we have a real chance, to send someone to Washington who's principled. I mean, that's the problem. And a lot of Republicans, we vote for Republican candidates because it's the lesser of the two evils. That's not going to be the case. No one's going to go and vote against Bloomberg if I'm the nominee. They're going to vote for me. And if I win, I'm not going to disappoint anybody, except maybe the guy that just walked out. No, I don't know. But anyway, let me just open it up and take any of the questions that you have on any of the issues that I haven't touched on.
Okay, I have a question.
Sure.
Some of your ideas sound very intriguing to me. I like your enforcement. I'm an English teacher, so I know. But you're just one person. The Senate has a lot of people. And how are you going to get your voice heard?
Well, my voice is pretty loud. But it's a small
people to support you in that role.
It's a small chamber, and the way Congress works. I mean, the senators, they have their offices in a hallway, in a corridor, and so my office is going to be right next to everybody else's. And I look at it as kind of like a war of attrition. Right? I've got to win over senators a few at a time. And I think one of the things I'm going to do is I might have classes in the Senate too, in economics and the Constitution, just to kind of educate these guys. But I really want to, get them to understand, because when I go to Washington, one term is really all I want, and and so I don't have to spend any time figuring out how I'm going to get reelected, and this is like 90% of a senator's job is to get reelected. And doing all the things that you need to do to get reelected. See, I'm not doing any of those things. So maybe I'll kind of be like 10 senators in that respect. But I got to just meet these guys one-on-one and take them out for a beer or, and spend a couple hours with each senator and just get them, they're all brainwashed now. They've heard so much nonsense from Wall Street economists or people that don't know what they're talking about. I mean, they've listened to guys like Ben Bernanke and Timothy Geithner who have never gotten anything right in their entire career. All I got to do is say, look, look at what I was saying. Here, read this. Let me tell you, and show them that I know what I'm talking about, and the people that they're listening to don't know what they're talking about, and get them to understand how high the stakes are. What is actually going to happen if we keep doing what we're doing? And I got to believe that some of these guys, they're not heartless. They're not, they care about the country somewhat, or at least they did at one point. I can just get that out of them, and gradually, convince them. If there's a few people, it's like, you look at it, sometimes you go out and there's a dance floor and there's nobody dancing, right? Nobody wants to be the first couple up on that floor. But the minute somebody gets up there and starts dancing, well, another couple comes on. And then, pretty soon the place is packed. So I think as I start converting people over, and it's not just me against 99, then it's 2 against 98 or 3 against 97, and we get more people on board that are willing to do the right thing and stand up for the right thing, then we can win. But we've got to do it. I mean, we don't have a lot of time. If I can't accomplish this in 6 years, right, the nation is going to completely collapse. If the government, if spending keeps growing at this rate, right, the country can't handle it. I mean, if you think about it, the country's on fire, right? Unfortunately, the government lit the fire, but now they're trying to put it out. And how they try to put it out? They're pouring gasoline on it, right? And every time the fire gets bigger, what do? Well, get more gasoline, because that's all they know. And every time and they can't make the connection, right? I got to let them know that that's gasoline and get them to understand that they can't keep pouring that on there, because we can't survive this for another 6 years. As I said, the currency will collapse, and the problems there are going to be horrific because prices are going to run out of control. And then what's the government going to do? Price controls? Then what? Then there's going to be shortages. Then you're going to be waiting online to buy bread. I don't want that. Right? I don't think any of our politicians want that. So someone is going to have to stand up and do it. I don't need to convince everybody. As I said, 40 senators is all it takes. I don't need all of them. Just 40. Because if we can filibuster, right, then that's it. We bring it to an end. They usually try to say, well, you have to raise the debt ceiling because you'll shut the government down. fine, shut it down. Otherwise, we're going to shut the country down. I'd much rather shut the government down. And if we actually shut it down, maybe these guys would actually make the cuts. Because it's not hard. You just got to vote. All you got to do is do it. Right? So I think that I can convince them. And if I can't convince them, then who's going to do it? If I'm not going to do it, who's going to do it? I think I have a unique background, and I can show all the things that I've predicted that came true. I think I'm persuasive. I think I can. I speak in very simplistic terms. I think so simple that even the congressman should be able to understand me. So, I think I have a good skill set to get this done. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I did. Thank you.
Who's next? Yes.
What is your philosophy or where are you coming from in terms of public education?
Well, I think the federal government shouldn't be involved in public education. So I just assume we abolish the Department of Education and save about $80 billion a year. I would like education to be handled locally. There's nothing about education in the Constitution. Now, you would think, right, if it was so important to the framers, that they would have written it in there. After all, they did have schools back then, right? So if they thought the federal government should be involved in schools or education, they had plenty of space to write it in there. They didn't. And so it's already screwed up higher education, as I mentioned, with the student loans. So if the government would only get out of it. But, everybody wants, we want the government to spend money on education. Okay, great. Where does it get that money? Right? It doesn't have its own stash of money. It's not getting it from some colony up on Mars, right? It's getting it from us. So it only has the money to spend that it takes from us. Well, how about if they don't take the money? It's like giving yourself a blood transfusion from your right arm from your left arm, and you still have the blood on the floor. It's not worth it, right? So I want Washington to leave our money here so we can spend it on education. Personally, I'm all for vouchers. I'm all for something to bring competition into the local schools. Because, if you look at what the public schools, what they spend per pupil compared to what the private schools spend, the public schools spend a lot more per pupil, and they don't deliver, in general, as good an education. Sometimes they do, but it's always more expensive because the market forces aren't there. I want the parents to be able to send their kids to the school that they want. So if you give them a voucher on the local level, if they want to go to the public school, let them go. I'd like to have a voucher. I think it would go something like this. You figure out whatever the local community is spending per pupil, whether it's $6,000 a pupil, $8,000, and just give the parents a voucher for maybe half of that. So, okay, you can go to the public school. Here's a voucher for $4,000. Send them. I bet a lot of private schools will come up. And not only that, I don't want to make it so you have to use the whole voucher. What if you can find one to do it for $2,000? Then you can take the difference and put it into a fund for your kids' college. And I don't think it's that expensive to educate kids. I really don't. I think if we get some real entrepreneurs into the education business, give them a real incentive to deliver a quality product for a low cost, people will do it. And I trust the parents. Some people say, well, if we the parents will just send their kids to the cheapest schools. Why would they? Who cares more about your kids, you or some bureaucrat in Washington or some bureaucrat in Hartford? So I trust parents to make the right decisions for their kids, to send their kids to the best schools that their money can buy, knowing if they can do it on a cheaper level, they have extra money for college. But that's not going to be accomplished on a federal level. That has to be accomplished on a local level. But if we can shrink federal taxes, which is what I want to do, by shrinking the size of government, every state will have more money for education because the government's not going to be taking it, especially a state like Connecticut, because we are one of the worst states in that respect. For every dollar that Washington takes from us, we get 65 cents back. So that's a rotten deal, right? We're spilling a lot of blood on the floor. Next question.
You answered my question when they were bossing the Department of Education. That should have been answered my question.
Yeah, look, there are a lot of government departments that exist that don't. I've been using the example too. One of the ones to get rid of is the Department of Energy.
The other one.
But we didn't. You see how we didn't have a Department of Energy until 1979. So, how did we get to 1979? We didn't have one, right? Did we need one? Well, the country was here. And why did we get it? Does anybody remember why we got it?
High oil price in Saudi Arabia.
But that was part of it. But the reason was we needed the Department of Energy to reduce our dependence on foreign oil. That was how we got it. We were going to get this energy department, and we were going to reduce our dependence on